Thanks a lot. I'm Steve Simon, Minnesota Secretary of State, and I like to tell people, as maybe you've heard, that I'm in the democracy business. And what a time to be in the democracy business, am I right? I mean, today alone, let alone the last few years, right, in the life of our country and our state and our community. So it's an honor to do this work, it's an honor to be here. I have been asked to talk a little bit about one aspect of the democracy business that's going to be affecting a lot of us coming up, and that is the new presidential nominating primary that's coming up on March 3rd. This is new for us. Before I talk about the details, let me zoom out a little bit, go back in time just a few years so we can talk about how we got here. Flashback to 2016. A lot of energy, a lot of activity on both sides of the aisle when it came to presidential selection. We had an open seat presidential race, right? Barack Obama term limited, so we knew no matter what, we were electing a new president of the United States. And because of that, as you'd expect, as happens every time when you have an open seat, there's a lot of energy and activity on both sides. Well, what happened, if you recall, who here attended a precinct caucus in 2016? Okay, almost everyone in the room, it looks like. You remember what a mob scene it was in some places, all right? It was huge, it was packed. Junior high classrooms or whatever that were built for 30 kids had, 130 people squeezed into them. People in the hallways, people couldn't find parking, it's winter, all the rest. So in a way, the caucuses were a victim of their own success. I mean, it's a good thing that people turned out, but they turned out in such huge numbers that it tended to overwhelm the ability of party regulars and volunteers to handle it all. And some people were turned off and turned away by that. So legislators reacted right away, like within a day or a week. Legislators at the time reacted and said, look, we got to do what we've talked about doing for a long, long time. We're going to keep the caucuses. We're keeping them. But we're going to pluck out this one piece, just the selection of the presidential candidates, and we're going to do that in a separate, real election at real polling places, funded by the government with election judges and all the precinct divisions and everything else. A real election, just as real as the August primary and the November general election. So that's what's going to go on this March 3rd, Tuesday, March 3rd. Happens to be Super Tuesday, so we're sharing the bill with California, Texas, other big states March 3rd. But here's the interesting part. The absentee period for that election starts January 17th. So it's not as far off as you might think. Starting January 17th, we will be one of the first states in the country to start voting for nominees for president. But here's the deal. It comes with a big asterisk in my book, and something that is going to concern some people. Maybe not people in this room, but people that we all know. The way that the legislature wrote the law originally in 2016, this is key, the way they wrote it originally in 2016 was to say that we're going to have separate ballots by party. So a voter will have to, either in the polling place or beforehand by absentee, select an actual ballot by saying, hey, give me the DFL ballot, give me the Republican ballot. We now got 4 major parties in this state, Democrats, Republicans, and 2 marijuana legalization parties made major party status. So we've got 4 now. But anyway, the voter's going to have to say which ballot they want. And when they originally wrote it, they said that the record of who picks what ballot would be a public record, totally public. So anyone out there, not just a reporter or whatever, any citizen on the street could get that list. That gave me and a lot of other folks some heartburn, because what about an employer? What if a boss or an employer said, hey, I wonder who all the Democrats are that work for me, or all the Republicans, or whatever it is, or anyone on the street. So I and others went in this session saying, please, please close that loophole. That's going to make a lot of people uncomfortable. A lot of people don't want that getting out there. And so, in my perfect world, no one would get that information. If I could wave a magic wand, it would be like our August primary, right? You vote in a certain column for a certain party, but no one's ever going to know. It's untraceable. We couldn't get that far. We did get it off the public list. But now what's going to happen is that the parties will get that information. The parties will. Nobody else will, no journalist, no person off the street, but the parties will. And that puts us in an awkward position in this sense. I bet in this room, many of us, there's no question, our friends and neighbors know where our sympathies lie. But we know a lot of folks in our families, our neighborhoods, our workplaces, whatever, who aren't that way. They don't want to wear it on their sleeves. They're a little nervous about ending up on anybody's list, even if it's just the political parties. And it might keep some people home, and it might make some people nervous who aren't the types who put on bumper stickers and lawn signs and t-shirts and things like that, like many of the rest of us, I suspect, in this room. So that's just one asterisk. So our job as an office is to get the info out there. We don't want to chill participation, but we also don't want people to go in unaware of this and then find out a week or two later, like, what? I just voted and my name's where? On a list somewhere? So it's an imperfect situation, but this is the first time since the 1950s that we're going to have a truly binding presidential primary in Minnesota. So we're all in this together. I've been traveling the state talking to folks at the county, city, and township level. Those are our partners. They're the ones who actually count the votes. Our office, we don't count a single vote. We don't train or hire a single election judge. That all happens at the local level. So I've been in very close touch with county auditors, auditor treasurers, city clerks, etc., because they're the ones having to do the stuff on the front lines. So the good news is, a great avenue for participation. You know, there are advantages and disadvantages to caucuses and primaries. You all know that. You've been around the block. One reason the legislature did this too is, of the many advantages of caucuses, one disadvantage is there's no meaningful absentee provision. So if you're sick that day, or your kid's sick that day, or you're working a night shift, or you're suddenly out of town, or you're in the military, or you're studying abroad, or whatever it is, you're really out of luck. At least with a primary, a lot more folks can participate. And I realize there are trade-offs. So I'm just here to tell you, I think it's a good thing in terms of access for a lot of people, but there's that kind of asterisk on the end of it, which is that your name will end up with the political parties. And by the way, I should clarify, all of the major political parties get all of the lists. So it's not just like a glorified caucus sign-in sheet. It's not like you go to the DFL caucus, you sign in, and of course the DFL party gets that list. Imagine a situation where you go to a caucus, sign in, and the DFL get that list, the Republican Party get that list, and the two marijuana parties get that list. So all of the major parties will get all of the lists. They'll get each other's lists. And so that's just something that's going to give some people pause. Again, in my perfect world, what I would want is nobody gets it. End of story. It's just like August. We couldn't get that far, but at least it's not public now. At least the person on the street or the journalist or whoever can't get those lists. So it's imperfect, but that's where we're headed. March 3rd is the election. January 17th, it starts the absentee period. Remember, you can either go to a government office to vote absentee, or better yet, you can go and have the ballot sent to you at home and just vote from home. So I'll leave it there. If I know I have a few minutes left, just give me the hook whenever. But I'm sure there's some questions or comments, so I'm happy to take them. Yeah.
What's on that list? What information will be on that list if they can
Oh,
get it?
yeah, great. The question was, what information is on that list? It's the same thing that's on the list for people that get, here's what's on the list. I'll just tell you what's on the list. It's real simple stuff. It's your name, it's your address, it's your year of birth, not your date of birth, just your year of birth, and your voting history, meaning what elections you voted in. Obviously not who you voted for, but like, are you the type who votes in every single municipal primary, or is this a voter who just votes in presidential elections, that kind of thing. So that's it. But it will be, you know, a name and address. Yeah, go ahead.
What are permissible uses of the list by the party?
Question, what are the permissible uses by the party? It's a great question. And we have wanted to, and we're going to do it again this legislative session, tighten that language. There are some guardrails here. The parties can't use it, for example, for any commercial purpose. They can't sell their list to Comcast or AT&T or some vendor like that. But they can use it for things that parties do, which is to target people, send them mail, give them phone calls, things like that. We just want to make sure we tighten up that language to make sure that's all they're using it for and that they're not finding a loophole to do something else with it. Yes, sir.
Whose idea was it to do this in the first place?
Yeah, good question. Whose idea was it to do it this way in the first place? Well, I'll tell you the way it went down in 2016. The two major national parties, the DNC and the RNC, told the Minnesota legislature, you can call it by whatever name you want, but here's what they said. They said, if you write this primary law and you fail to have separate ballots, so we can trace who's who, if you fail to do that, then we, both of them said this, RNC and DNC, we will fail to recognize your primary, meaning Minnesota would get 0 delegates to both the Democratic and the Republican National Convention. Just picture that convention hall with the big Minnesota sign and like no chairs, right? So basically what both national parties said were you have to record who's who and who chose what ballot, or else if you pass it without that, we're not going to recognize it. So legislators, you know, were in a tough spot, and they decided to do that. Now my point at the time was, look, what about Wisconsin, right next door? They have a presidential primary, and it's like our August primary. Nobody knows, and the answer there was basically, well, they were grandfathered in. So It's a tough spot. It's a tough spot. So that's why it happened. Again, if I could wave a magic wand, I think it should be like August and nobody knows. Yes, sir.
You started to answer this question by saying that the parties can't sell this information, okay, for commercial, but can they share it with labor and other groups that they might want to?
Well, labor is a little bit different. That's a great question about labor, very relevant to this audience, obviously. I can tell you, when I said sell, they can't use it for commercial purposes. I think that's what the statute says. So I would interpret that as sell or give to Comcast or AT&T. But with allies, that's a different story. And that's kind of a tender area. So that's one of the reasons that we want to tighten it up. We don't want that information getting out there. Again, I'm guessing, most people in this room, me included, there's no mystery to our friends and neighbors where we are, right? But there are a lot of people you can imagine in your life, I know in mine, they don't like to, they have a sympathy one way or another, but they don't want to wear it on their sleeve. Maybe it's because of their occupation, maybe they're a school administrator or a journalist or a clergy member or whatever, where they have to, you know, have appear objective for their job, but.
Some of the sharing is unclear right now?
Correct, some of the sharing is unclear, that's exactly right. There's some guardrails in there, I want to see a lot more. If they're going down this road and saying you got to have the separate ballots and the parties get the data, then we got to have more guardrails in it, exactly as you say, because I would worry about the potential to leak this stuff. The parties come back at me and they say, well, you know, our record's been pretty good with pretty sensitive stuff. They get polling and survey data, and that hasn't leaked in a mass way. And that's true, they're right about that. But it makes me a little nervous, and I think, more to the point, it's going to make a lot of voters nervous. Again, if my name leaks out that I voted in my party's presidential primary, it's no mystery, it's no big surprise. But we all know people in our lives who wouldn't be too happy about that. Yes?
How are they going to do the separate ballot in a mail ballot district?
Yes, great question. How are we going to do the separate ballot in a mail ballot district? Some of you may know this. We got about 60,000 people in Minnesota who vote in townships or small cities where they're mail only. They've gotten rid of the polling place, only mail. And how do you do that? The rule there is that the local governments will have to send 4 ballots to every voter, 4 ballots. And then that voter has to choose which ballot. That's different than absentee. If you were all to just vote absentee, just say, hey, mail me the ballot. There's a space on the form, online or on paper, where you can choose the ballot. They're not going to have to mail you all 4. You could say Republican, DFL, you know, marijuana legalization, whatever it is. But the mail-only places, the townships and small cities, there they will get all 4. Yes, sir.
The primary election on March the 3rd, is that in place of the caucuses or in addition to that?
It's in addition to the caucuses. We're keeping caucuses for everything else. Platform issues, legislative endorsements, county commissioner, governor, US Senate, everything. It's just this one piece, once every 4 years, is going to be taken out and run separately as like a real election. That's it. But so we're going to be a hybrid state. We're going to have both, caucuses and primary. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm from Itasca County, but people are getting mail up there from the Republicans saying, if you don't fill this out and mail this back in, you're unable to vote. So once they fill it out, once they fill this out, and they voted Republican 30 years ago, one case 27 years ago, and they fill this out, so are they locked into voting into the Republican primary?
No. I haven't heard about this incident, but no, nothing you do before game day really locks you in. If you're going to go up and show and vote in person in the poll, all accounts, what you say and what you request on game day, on election day in the polling place,